No pressure.
She's like guitar too.
We now call to order the meeting of the Winter City Council on Tuesday, September 3rd. We have roll call, please.
Councilmember Anderson,
Here.
Councilmember Lawrence. Here. Councilmember New,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Callen,
Here.
Mayor Biaggi.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dan McGuire, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, approval of the agenda.
Mayor and Council, just a couple of things on the agenda. Staff's going to pull item D, now come back in October. And discussion item number 1, we'd just like to pull up and make a consent calendar item letter F.
Questions on the agenda? Open for motion?
Vote to approve.
Second. Motion and second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Passes unanimously. Okay, council and staff comments. Councilmember Lauren.
I attended the joint land use workshop on 8/21 and met with the city manager via telephone today.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson. Okay. So. Councilmember New.
On Wednesday, the 21st of August, I attended the joint City Council Planning and Planning Commission meeting discussing planning subjects in that area. On the 27th of August is the Elder Day Planning meeting. On the 29th, interviews for Seniors Commission, the Commission on Aging. And on Friday, whatever the date, the last Friday of the month, I went to an event that was sponsored by CTAP. They invited us to the River Cats baseball game. And if they do it again next year, I would encourage you to do it. It was a lot of fun, and a box, and great food and beverages. And so if it comes up, don't miss out. And then on the second today, I met with the city manager, and we spent time talking about the agenda and planning. That's it. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Callen.
Thank you, Mayor. On the 21st, I also attended the planning workshop, and on the 27th, I attended the school district 2x2 for Councilmember Lauren. It was also attended by Chief Miller, and the main subject of the day was safety for the schools. And on the 29th, Councilmember New and myself conducted interviews for the new senior commission, which is going to be brought back, if not on the 17th, in the first meeting in October. So, and then I met with the city manager today. That's all I have.
Thank you. I was also at the North Area Planning Workshop on the 21st. On the 22nd, I was at the Affordable Housing Steering Committee meeting. Talked about a couple potential new developments in the city limits. On the 23rd, I believe it was 23rd, was the Earthquake Festival. I attended, we had a good turnout. On the 24th, the Yola Food Bank had their grand opening and ribbon cutting. It was very impressive to see the facility that they've got in place over there now. I think they raised $9.5 million. Most of it was from private donations, so they're going to be able to feed a lot more people now. So it's very impressive. On the 27th, we had the city and school district 2x2 meeting. And on the September 2nd, I met with the city manager to go over the agenda. Thank you, everyone, for all your time on the committee work and the meetings. Very appreciated. We will now move on to public comments for anything that is not on tonight's schedule. If you would like to speak, turn in one of the forms that are in the back. I have a couple here. First one I have is Gloria Rhodes.
Yes, my name is Gloria Rose. I live at 400 Morgan Street, apartment 27, Winters, California. I've lived in Winters from July 2005 to December 2015, and I returned in April of 2018. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm here out of concern for the safety of myself and all those that put themselves in harm's way when using public streets, whether crossing the street on foot, in a wheelchair, or driving an automobile. I use all three of these methods of transportation due to my disabilities. But I do not attempt to cross this area at all because of the danger. I'm referring to Grant Street, Highway 128 at Morgan Street. Instead, I have to drive out of my way using Baker Street to Railroad Street to the traffic light at Grant Street to drive back to Lorenzo's and still taking a chance having to make a left-hand turn. Finds the speed limit going east is 45 miles per hour and going west is 30 miles per hour. This is not using common sense. Driving Baker Street is also hazardous due to vehicles and employees darting out of Mariani Nut Company without warning because there is no yellow caution light or crosswalk there also. I have no options. We desperately need a traffic control lights at these intersections. This needs to be corrected. Are there any plans for adding crosswalks or control lights for Morgan Street and Grant Street, Highway 128 or Baker Street? I also have another issue concerning the handicap ramp at the corner of Baker Street and Morgan on the Round Table Pizza side. The lip of it is too high for a wheelchair, and I almost was thrown to the ground when I attempted to go over it. Being unable to, I had to drive in the street that needs repairing. I would appreciate it if the council would direct their staff to place these concerns on the city planning's agenda or wherever is appropriate to resolve these hazards.
Thank you.
Okay? And can you answer my question about why they?
Since it's not an agendized item, the council can't discuss it. The city manager can give you an update on what the plans are for that area.
Yeah, are you gonna stay here for the meeting? We only have one item.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be a long
Okay,
meeting, but, how about if we talk
all right,
afterwards, I'll point you something.
thank you.
Thank you. Next up, I have Gail Miller.
My name is Gail Miller. I also live at 400 Morgan Street, apartment 10 in Winters. And I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about a serious safety issue in Winters. I moved here permanently in April of 2019. If this hasn't been addressed, I feel the safety of citizens crossing Highway 128 between the Dollar General and Lorenzo's Market, the only market in town, should be looked into. Winters is a great town and so many citizens, both young and the elderly, walk to the stores as well as those riding bikes but getting across the highway to get to the only grocery store is dangerous and could cost someone their life. A friend and I were coming into town doing the new 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I was the first car in line. We saw a friend crossing the highway when a car, and she was doing it safely, there were no other cars around, when a car came around the turnabout towards 505 and speeded up to the point where he nearly missed this person. I don't know why a turnabout would be more important than a crosswalk with a yellow light when someone is crossing the highway. I've heard the reason for the turnabout is to slow down the trucks. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I've heard. And the trucks actually drive across those. I don't know if that slows them down or not, but that could be. I am more worried about speeding cars hitting someone than a truck. I know this is probably a Caltrans issue, but I feel the city council should really pursue this as the highway runs through the main part of town, not on the outskirts of it. Thank you for considering this issue.
Thank you. Next I have Tina Loudon.
Good evening, Tina Loudon, 320, where am I? Neiman Street. Hi, everybody. I'm would like to address the extended lap swimming. There was like 8 of us that was here at the last city council meeting. None of us have heard anything, so I'd like to put it back on the agenda. Also, early morning swimming and recreation swimming. Such beautiful weather. Why can't we have recreational swimming during this beautiful weather? And one thing I did not mention was some of the seniors would love to come to the city council meeting, but they can't hear. And I know at our church at St. Anthony's, we have hearing devices, and it would be nice if we might look into it for the city council chamber here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Abigail Vargas is up next.
My name is Abigail Vargas, and I live at 1012 Taft Court. And I'm here to request that the city council consider extending the swimming and use of the pool for laps. I also, like Tina, have been enjoying the lap pool this summer and would like to see it extended. It's been definitely beneficial towards my health. And then the second item I wanted to talk about was Taylor Street and Kennedy Drive. There's a 2-way stop there right now, and I would like to see if it could be considered to be a 4-way stop. My husband and I moved here a year ago, and weekly we mention almost getting hit driving on that street because it's very difficult for some reason to see either direction. There's a tree, and then there's typically a truck parked with a trailer. So it's very difficult to see the cars, and they drive really fast down that road. I think because there's not any residential homes right there. And then the other item on Taylor Street is I almost run the stop sign at Taylor and MacArthur. Once again, on one direction, the stop sign is blocked until you get right up to it by a tree. And the stop sign that's painted on the street is super, super light. And again, for whatever reason, I don't see it till I get right on it, and usually have to make a hard stop. So I don't run the stop sign. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Susan Hamilton.
Is this an okay time to comment on the public workshop we had? Okay. So many of us were left, Susan Hamilton, I'm a farmer, 27270 County Road 87. Several times during the workshop, the importance of citizen input was mentioned. Many of us feel that was lip service, and Heidi was merely telling us how the development was going to proceed, not if the development was going to proceed. So my question to you is, how are you going to implement citizen input? And are you actually hearing us that we do not want the town to double very quickly, as is proposed. Nor do we want to work with Hofstetler, who has a not so good reputation. So, I'm glad you had the meeting. There was a lot of information, but many of us felt like we were being talked at, and our input was not necessarily considered.
Thank you. Next, I have Kate Laddish.
Mayor. Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And 3 quick items. The first is I'd like to echo what my eloquent neighbor said about the intersection of Morgan and Grant Street. That was an intersection that was identified during the Complete Streets process as an intersection of concern, and was flagged as something that would get a roundabout. I think actually initially it was flagged as being the first one that would get a roundabout, but then the intersection just west kind of went out. And I know we've talked in previous meetings about what the timing might be for the Grant and Morgan, for there to be an improvement there to increase safety, because with so many people trying to cross right there, it's very high dense population, and whether it's young people or old people or people with different mobility issues, there's a lot of pedestrian traffic, and it's an uncontrolled intersection. So I look forward to ongoing work on that, and perhaps hearing an update. I think we most recently talked about it during the transportation element discussion. So, item number 2 is this, of course, you're totally surprised to hear this, that I remain enthusiastic about the swimming pool and lap swim. And I really thank Tracy for everything that she's done this year to keep things going. And Tammy Jo, who is the manager, has done a fantastic job. And Coach Aaron has really gone above and beyond. I'd be so thrilled to have the pool open through October again. I know in the past we've worked about if we have a certain number of lap swimmers. And so we'll talk.
You know exactly what we need.
We know what it is. We have 15 this year. Is that what we're aiming for? We'll figure out the details. But
Tracy, what's the number?
I think it was a dozen, but
Dozen?
15 sounds
we
good.
can.
sounds
Oh,
good.
dozen.
If you run at 15,
So
we'll
it's-
go with
so-
15.
So I do the lap swimmer email list, and so I'd be delighted to do whatever's needed to kind of facilitate some extended hours.
Yeah, we'll get the word out.
Oh, that'd be great. So, and then the third is to thank the city for having the workshop, the planning workshop, and I really appreciate the idea. I believe, Mayor Biasi, I think that started with you, and then I appreciate everything that the council and planning commission and staff did to make that happen. I look forward to hearing the details about how some of the different items that were discussed and decided upon will be implemented. And I think the turnout and the enthusiasm that people expressed and the concerns that were expressed really showed that people are right to be involved. And I think the tone at the workshop showed that people are interested in working on this together so that we can come up with something that really works for our city. So I look forward to the city specifying how we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to a non-agendized item? Thank you, everyone. Those are all very good comments. I wish we could have addressed them, but unfortunately, we're not allowed to do that because they're not on the agenda. So thank you for coming and bringing this up. We'll move on to the consent calendar.
Mayor and Council, a couple of items. Item A are the minutes from the regular meeting on August 20th. Item C is the adoption of a resolution accepting a grant deed for a 2-acre parcel from Homes by Towns as part of a phase 1 requirement from the Winters Highlands subdivision that was put together. There is an approved affordable housing plan for the project. It includes 3 specific elements in it. Moderate housing is provided through duplex lots. There is approximately $2 million in lieu fee that will be paid towards low and very low. And then the third component is the dedication or basically dedicated over to the city, this 2-acre lot, which we'll come up with a strategy on what we're gonna do with that lot. So this is a part of phase 1. Lots of partying and winter's coming up. Item D is the street closure request and amplified sound permit for Porch Fest, Sunday, September 15th. It's gonna be great. Last year was very successful. Staff and the applicant have worked together. We're gonna modify it a little bit. Food trucks more in the middle to kind of be some sound barriers, but I've got how many down, so it's gonna be great. And then on item E is the amplified sound permit for the Festival de la Comunidad, aka Carnitas Festival, which is on September 28th.
From 4 to 10:30.
4 to 10:30. If you like carnitas, this is where to go. Finally, the formally discussion item number 1, now discussion or consent calendar item letter F. This is a memorandum of understanding which would provide that the city would become a member of the Solano Economic Development Corporation. The amount of $3,000. Robert Burris, who is the CEO, came and spoke before the council, and the council gives the nod on this. This is a wonderful opportunity for us over the years as we look to find which economies really affect winters. Undoubtedly, Solano County plays a very big role in the East Bay, so this will be an opportunity for the city to be a member of the Solano EDC, and that's the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a few council members that have conflicts due to proximity. Councilmember Anderson?
Consent.
Maybe we get to the discussion then. Yeah. Okay, Councilmember Lauren, do you have any conflicts with any items?
I have no conflicts with any items.
Councilmember New?
I have a conflict with item D.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
Okay, and I have a conflict with item D, the Porch Fest. I live too close to where it will be held, so I will not be voting on that. If there's no questions, I will open it up for a motion.
And so, Mayor, on item D, there are 3 members of the council that have conflicts due to the proximity of their residences. And so on that one, we need to go the rule of necessity and do our drawing based on the walnuts.
I was wondering why the bag of nuts was out. I was thinking, man, somebody is messing with us. Democracy, so.
We only have 2 council members that can vote on one of the items. We have to take a nut out of the bag. There's odd and even so that one more person can vote.
We are an ag town.
Okay.
I approve of that.
We're gonna switch to Emmons, but you know what?
You knew I was coming today.
We knew Susan was gonna be in the house, so that was gonna be it. All right, we have 3 nuts in the bag.
Well,
2 of them say go,
I'm sorry.
and 1 of them says stay. So, here we go. Move them around a little bit. So go out of the copy. No, all right.
Bill, Peter, and Cheryl.
Say. And then it says, go, you're out. All right.
Yeah. I could not help myself.
That one says stay. Sorry, Councilmember New, but you're out.
And so on the voting, we vote normal on consent, but the record will reflect that Councilmember New and Anderson did not vote on Porch Fest, and that Councilmember Anderson did not vote on items E or F.
All that, Tracy?
I move to approve the consent calendar with the changes as stated.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Passes. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our discussion item. Our first discussion item will be the Valley Clean Energy.
Mayor, I believe Councilmember Anderson had a conflict.
So
on
yes,
this as well, and so
Councilmember Anderson, you have a conflict with the Valley Clean Energy agenda item, is that correct? Okay. We will excuse you.
Does he get to go home?
You choose.
Very good. Mayor and Council, so tonight, staff's bringing before you with a recommendation that you provide this direction regarding joining Valley Clean Energy Authority. As you will recall, last September, the city was approached by Valley Clean Energy Board about adopting, about joining VCE. It was a pretty aggressive timeline as far as going through and doing an evaluation, and literally we would have been going right up until the last week of December. VCE is quickly establishing itself as a key energy player within the region, not only within Yolo County, but also exploring opportunities outside. This summer, I went through and I authorized the overall release of load information for the city of Winters. Valley Clean Energy has come in with an overall review of that, but also staff is bringing us back to get direction from the council. In the staff report, what I've included is some basic information about VCE. The rule on the energy purchase is pretty simple. The rates are pretty similar to PG&E. If people want to buy green energy, they can do that, and they can also opt out if they want to do that. In the staff report is an overall calendar which shows you basically a timeline for consideration of this item. Tonight, we have representatives here from VCE to answer any questions that the council has. I would assume that Supervisor Gary Sandy is a member of the board. We also have Jim Parks, who is one of the staff for VCE. And I don't know if he's changed his title, but the interim general manager of VCE.
It still works, yeah.
Whatever. Sears is here. So what I'd like to do is maybe turn it over to any of them that want to get up and address the council. And then staff is asking for direction tonight on whether to bring back the resolution moving forward on this. So why don't I hear?
Thank you, John. Mr. Mayor, council members. It's been my good fortune to have known many of you for many years and to be able to work with Steve on a number of different boards. So it's nice to be on this side of the podium tonight. I'm here as Vice Chair of Valley Clean Energy, Chairman Tom Stoller, who is the chair this year, also at council meeting in Woodland, so he couldn't be here. I'm here instead. As John mentioned, we presented an overview of community choice aggregation last year. That was amidst the launch of Valley Clean Energy. Since then, we've really made remarkable progress. We're glad to be able to share with you tonight. And that includes a new contract with the Yolo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District for local hydroelectric power from the Indian Valley Reservoir. It includes a $1.9 billion grant from SACOG for electric vehicle infrastructure in the communities that we serve. The currently Davis, Woodland, and the unincorporated areas of Yolo County. We are financially positioned to pay off local startup loans 3 years in advance of when they were coming due. And we are increasingly delivering higher amounts of renewable energy at competitive rates, at the same time retaining 92% of our customers. And we are very excited, quite frankly, at the prospect of having Winters join Woodland and Davis in this enterprise, which gives people stable electricity, access to clean energy, and a way in which consumers can exercise their own choices about what energy they want to consume, where they want to see power coming from. Obviously, we're in a very dynamic energy environment at the moment because of the situation with PG&E, but we really want to extend a warm welcome to Winters, to invite your participation. I hope you'll consider joining us on this journey forward in exploring clean energy at lower rates. Mitch, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I can, but I don't have to. So I think Board Member Sandy sort of expressed it. We're very pleased to be back here. It's almost a year to the date from the last time we appeared in front of you. The last time I was here with Supervisor Saylor, I brought the better looking one this time. But tonight, we're really here to answer any questions that the council might have about the processes, about how it's worked for the jurisdictions that are currently participating in Valley Clean Energy, and to basically walk through where Valley Clean Energy is going to be working with John and his team at City Hall to, if the council provides direction to move forward tonight, to work with community engagement. Jim Parks, as John mentioned, is our outreach and programs director. And so we've, as you saw in your staff report, we've developed kind of a basic outline of some community engagement activities that we think can be effective and helpful in spreading the word about Valley Clean Energy here within Winters. And so with that, I think time is better spent sort of answering any questions that the council might have. So with that, I'll stay here or I'll go sit down. These are your preferences.
Okay. You can sit.
All right.
We'll see what questions come up and see who should address them. We'll go from there. Any questions?
I've read the staff report.
Yeah, I'd like to bring one thing up that was mentioned in my meeting with the city manager. Several years back, before my time up here, there was a plan to have the county go to SMUD. And we were told that Winters couldn't be part of that because of the way the transmission lines work, that we're not part of that part of the county. So how does that affect this?
So that's a separate investigation that Valley Clean Energy is engaged in right now. So that would have a local distribution or delivery, taking over the local distribution delivery system if we were to do that. Valley Clean Energy is focused, its core business is is community choice aggregation, which only deals with the generation part of your bill. Delivery part of the bill stays with PG&E under this particular model. I think the conversation that you and city manager perhaps engaged in was some of the investigatory work that Valley Clean Energy is doing right now to see if it does make sense within the context of the PG&E bankruptcy, to see if there's an opportunity to look at that delivery system. We're kind of in the midst of that right now, but it's separate and apart from the decision by the city of Winters to join Valley Clean Energy, which is a community choice aggregation program. So, but in terms of the specific question, we're looking at how the local delivery system or distribution system sort of lines up within different parts of the county, whether they're out here in Winters, in our service territory that covers Capay up to Sparto, Woodland, Woodland, Davis, and the areas, unincorporated areas in between. So again, it's sort of a separate discussion right now.
If I might add,
At this point, it's all about the community choice aggregation. It's about the power purchase thing. As an aside, I mentioned the other avenue, but no matter what, if we were to go in, the power side would be very consistent. And that's what tonight is about. It is about the idea of moving into BCE regarding, I sound like Ian McGuire, regarding the CCA, the community choice aggregation. So,
Okay. Councilmember Lauren?
As I said before, the last time you were here, about a year ago,
Yeah.
I think it's a great choice for the community to be able to choose whether to have green energy. So we're very supportive of it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Vista Energy?
I'm not,
Okay, the only reason I ask is because I'm getting energy, PG&E delivers it, but it's getting through Vista. And if it's the same kind of program, I never noticed any difference except the energy's clean. And so, and I'd be happy to change over to Valley Clean or whatever, but I guess I would speak in favor of it if it's the same kind of situation. It's an option from PG&E or clean energy.
so I'm not familiar with Vista. Is that a residential, are you talking about a residential account? And do you have solar panels or do you have?
I do.
You do, okay, so Vista most likely is the company that provided that particular service, or perhaps I'm wrong with that.
No, you are actually, but only because I had the Vista before I had the solar panels. But
Got it. I'm sorry, yeah, so it sounds like that's a gas delivery system rather than an electricity system, so this only focuses on electricity. And I may be wrong about that, but we're happy to get back to you.
All right, no problem.
But,
I could
yeah.
speak more in favor of it if I think I'm perfectly comfortable.
Sure.
But if it's the same kind of program, I think the transition was flawless.
So in terms of the mechanics, I can't speak to that, but what I can say is that Vista would be a private company. Valley Clean Energy is a public entity, which is a not-for-profit. Obviously, our board of directors is made up of elected officials with local accountability. So that's the fundamental kind of perhaps difference with Vista. And again, we're only on the electricity side and only dealing with the generation portion of the bill. So the delivery piece stays with PG&E under our model.
All right. Thank you.
I have a list of questions. I had a list made at home and I forgot it, so I tried to remember what they were. But, so I know there was a request for the PG&E data to get the records from them.
That's
We were to do an analysis of that, and how did that work out?
So thank you for bringing that up. So we're still completing that analysis. So SMUD is running the model for us. What we've done is we've taken a notional value for winters, essentially saying your load profile here in winters looks very similar to our average load profile in Woodland and Davis and unincorporated Yolo County. So basically the average. And what we found is that the load growth with winters coming on would be about 5%, give or take, of our overall load. So it'd be about a 5% increase. And there's a neutral to slightly positive fiscal impact for Valley Clean Energy with winters coming on. And what we can do is we'll bring back more detailed information when that analysis is fully completed. It just wasn't quite ready for this evening, but when we come back, if the schedule sort of bears out, we'd be back in front of you again in October 1st. So that's kind of the basic outcome though. And it's similar to what we expected, again, because of the amount of load that winters would be adding to Valley Clean Energy service territory.
So I was looking at PG&E's website, and from what they say on their website in 2018, they provided like 85% of their energy as clean energy.
Right.
So they're up there already, very high percentage. So how do the rates, since you've been in business for a couple of years now with Valley Clean Energy, how do the rates compare to what PG&E's rates were for electricity?
So the rates in terms of cost, so we match PG&E's rates, meaning that you won't pay any more. The board has instituted a policy which we call our customer dividend program, and they just instituted it last year. So essentially what that means is that if Valley Clean Energy meets certain financial thresholds, meaning our base net margin at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year, the board then makes a decision as to how to allocate those additional revenues. And what they've identified is basically three buckets. One would be building reserves, which we need to do as a, for financial sort of responsibility as an entity, local programming, and then the third would be a customer dividend program. So what we don't know it now, but later on in 2020, we'll have an idea as we near the end of our fiscal year, how much revenue goes into each one of those buckets. And so if we do meet our financial goals for that particular year, if we do well, our customers do well. So there'll be a rate dividend that would be a bill credit for our ratepayers. And that would show up for residential purposes. It would show up one time in the fall. For non-residential businesses, it would be in the fall and in the spring. So, but the bottom line is we match PG&E's rates and with the potential to do a little bit better than them. In terms of the renewable energy content, PG&E right now is about 33%, give or take, on renewable energy, and then they match that with a large amount of nuclear energy coming out of Diablo Canyon, which is considered clean. There's also hydroelectricity that they provide, which isn't considered, I don't want to get into technical details, but it's not considered renewable. It's really big.
Right, I saw they had a graph showing all the different.
Exactly.
Where they're getting it from.
There were a lot of decisions over the years as to how to sort of divvy those things up, but by and large, their renewable content is about 33%. Ours came in around 48% in this year. Our goal was 42, so we actually outperformed that. Again, keeping our rates matching PG&E. And then we're 78% carbon free. So we're in the same range as PG&E without using nuclear electricity or nuclear generation.
And I think when Governor Brown was in office, he had an executive order that is raising the targets for how much percentage has to be renewable energy by 2025, 2030, 100% by 2045, correct?
Yeah, 100% by 2045, I believe that's right. And so it's sort of a stair step, almost a linear kind of progression across the number of years. And what I can tell you is that we're already outperforming our requirements from the state perspective. And Valley Clean Energy, like many of the other 20 CCAs across the state, which are serving over 10 million customers now, but we're outpacing the investor-owned utilities and also outpacing the state's goals. So we're just getting ready to sign power purchase agreements that would increase our renewable energy content in our portfolio pretty significantly. And our goal is to, our integrated resources plan, which was passed by the board last year, has us within the next couple of years of getting to 60% renewable. And the interesting thing about that is that we're actually able to, right now we're using short-term contracts because we're very early in our existence. As we sign those longer-term renewable contracts, the price actually comes down for us because they're longer-term contracts. So we're able to actually see a price decrease as well as increasing the amount of renewable energy that's in our portfolio.
Prices won't be higher than PG&E, but there's a chance they may be lower, right?
That's right.
I know, and I think I brought this up last year, was the agreement on the net energy metering with PG&E on people who have solar.
Yes.
Is that?
So we have good news to report there. The board of directors for Valley Clean Energy was able to make a policy decision based on financial outcomes that were a little uncertain last year. I'll grant you that. But they were able to make a policy decision, and we'll begin enrolling our net energy metering customers beginning January 1st of this coming year, so 2020. So over the course of the year, depending on when your true update is, if you're a solar customer, you'll be brought on your true update throughout the course of 2020. So we'll be serving an additional roughly 7,000 customers across our service territory, which I'll also note, we expect that Winters is going to be sort of matching kind of our low profile in terms of net energy metering customers as well. And just as a bit of a factoid, Yolo County performs really highly when it comes to measuring net energy metering and solar customers in the state. Probably not surprisingly, but there's a lot of uptake. So,
So do you have any programs that are similar to PG&E's time of use, that type of thing?
another very good question. Thanks for bringing that up. So coming up at the board meeting on September 12th, they will be considering a time of use policy. And essentially what it is it's going to match PG&E's time of use policy. Right now, if the board elects to adopt that, because again, one of the values of Valley Clean Energy and other CCAs is that we have local decision-making, rate-making authority. So if they do adopt that to sort of follow PG&E to make it easy and understandable for our customers, we would be rolling in time of use for residential customers in February of 2021. So there's a fair lead time coming into it. The idea is to have as much sort of public information that goes out as possible. And that's consistent with what other community choice aggregation programs are doing. There are several over in the Bay Area that their boards have already adopted that same approach. And we actually had a public workshop last week at the City of Woodland Council Chambers, and had good questions about what time of use is for residential customers, how that's going to roll out. So that's another example, I think, that we would say is a way for Valley Clean Energy to really kind of bring the energy question and discussion to a local level. Whereas before it would have been, there wouldn't have been a board of directors and folks here locally that are looking at those issues, I think, in the amount of detail that we have and doing the analysis and working with our SMUD, within our SMUD contract to be able to do an analysis and understand whether or not that's a good choice for the customers that we serve.
Another question I have is on the opting out part of it.
Mhm.
So I know if the city went forward with this agreement with Valley Clean Energy, then everybody in town would be in it unless they opt out. Why do you do it that way instead of the other way?
Well, we and everybody else has done it this way because it's state statute. That's the way that the state set it up back in 2002, thank you. See why I bring Jim along. But in 2002, when the state adopted that, it basically was coming out of the energy crisis at that time. So when all of the stuff was going on with Enron, the state decided it wanted to try to diversify the energy portfolio here, sort of how customers are potentially served. And so they set up this program, Community Choice Aggregation, and made it state law. And what they ended up deciding was that because the investor-owned utilities they have essentially market control, and it had essentially, in our particular case, about 100-year head start, they decided that the only practical way of getting alternatives in place was to offer an opt-out program rather than an opt-in program. And so that's some of the rationale behind why the program was set up the way it is. Now, what I will say is that they can, any customer can opt out. They get a total of 4 notices, 2 in advance of being enrolled and then 2 after. And so if they opt out within that period of time, they simply go back to PG&E bundled service. So their existing services they're in right now. If they opt out after that 2 month, after we start, the serving customers in Winters, if they opt out after that 2-month period, then there's a system that they opt back into PG&E, and it's called a transitional rate. Because at that point, PG&E, rightfully so, has said, you're no longer our customer. And so if you come back to us, then we need to buy energy on your behalf again. And so there's a transitional rate. And that transitional rate is simply based on the current market price of energy at that point. So for 6 months, you're open to that kind of 6-month potential variation. At this point, that transition rate has been actually a little bit, been equal to or less than PG&E's bundled rate. So go figure.
I got one that ties in with that. What percentage of people would have to opt out before it didn't work for you?
Another really good question. So when we were going through the feasibility study, when the county and Davis and Woodland were originally putting this together, we ran the economic model that Smutters helped us build and said, well, what happens at 5% opt-out rate, 10%, 15, 20, 25? Our assumed opt-out rate was somewhere based on the performance of other programs. We said it probably will never go below 20%. None of the CCA programs have seen any opt-outs above, I think around 15% is the highest right now. And so we did sort of a stress test, and we were able to get beyond 20% opt-out. And so that gives us great confidence that that we're a viable program, you know, going forward, even at opt-out rates. There'd have to be some really calamitous event that I'm sure my board of directors will not allow to happen. But if there is, we do see that we're still a viable entity going forward, even at sort of deep opt-out rates that have not been experienced by anyone up to this point. So I can't tell you where the break point is. I can't say, well, at 37% opt-out rate, it would be that, but we got beyond 20% and we were still viable at that point.
Yeah, my main concern is just that, and I think you addressed it already, that we don't see rates going up for, especially some of the people in our community who can't afford to pay higher utility bills, that they don't all of a sudden get hit with a higher rate for their electricity because of this. And they say it won't be any higher than PG and it might be less.
That's right. And an important distinction to make too, just as a reminder. So we're only on the generation side of the bill. And for residential customers, that represents about 40% of your total bill. The other 60% is on the delivery side of it. So PG&E keeps that. And I would also note that over the course of time, more and more has shifted from the generation side into the transmission distribution side of the bill. It used to be sort of flip-flopped. There used to be about 60% on the generation side and 40% on the other side. But that has shifted over time. And so right now, you know, when we talk about matching PG&E's rates, now rates, we don't have any control obviously on the delivery side of the bill. And so rates may be increasing. I shouldn't say maybe. It's likely that they're going to be increasing, you know, based on the sort of energy landscape that's out there right now with all the issues with reliability and some of the fire issues. So as we sort of enter into the discussion, we always try to make it clear that we're only sort of dealing with a portion of the bill, relatively, you know, less than 50% of the bill, and that energy bills may continue to go up, but at least there's a little bit of a hedge because there is local control.
So with the unknowns with PG&E right now in their current state, would Valley Clean Energy look into possibly purchasing any of the distribution part of it, or?
That was part of the question that I tried to address with Councilmember Cohen. So right now there is an investigation. The board of directors has directed staff to look at what that might look like within the context of the bankruptcy. What we do know is that PG&E is looking at divesting some of their assets. Right now, they're more on the generation side rather than the transmission distribution side. And you know, part of that is because that's their profit center. That's where they make the guaranteed return. Right now, that's about 12.5% guaranteed return on equity on the delivery side, the transmission distribution side. They don't. It's essentially supposed to be a pass-through on the generation side of it, but and they do have an application into the Public Utilities Commission to increase that return on equity, in part based on their ability to raise money and be a better investment potentially for those outside of our area. So it's a long answer to your simple question, which is not a simple question at all.
Not that simple, yeah.
But yeah, we're looking at the opportunity.
So just so everybody's clear, I believe PG&E would still be the one. If you have a power problem at your house, you're gonna call PG&E to come out and investigate what's going on. It's nothing to do with Valley Clean Energy. And it still will only be one bill that would come from PG&E. There wouldn't be a second bill from Valley Clean Energy, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if there are any service calls, again, you're a PG&E customer, I'm a PG&E customer, we would pick up the phone and call, say, hey, the lights are out. So that would be the process that would continue. You will continue to get one bill. The bill will look different a little bit because there will be a line item rather than PG&E's generation charges. There'll be Valley Clean Energy generation charges. Again, since we're matching, we think that makes it very easy for our customers to understand.
Yours might be, instead of Vista, it might be Valley Clean Energy.
I've got one more question. And this might be a little off track, but I just want to ask about it because I've heard about it in some other areas. Some of these independent companies and stuff are starting to buy up land to build large battery electric storage facilities. Is Valley Clean Energy got anything to do with that, or would you be looking at doing any of that, large storage facilities for electricity, or is that just too much on the transmission side, or?
No, actually, thank you, another very good question. So as we go through our procurement to expand and look at our portfolio, we're looking at not only just adding renewables, but we're also looking at potential to do battery storage, because as what's called a load serving entity, and this is alphabet soup, I gotta tell you, the energy industry, but load serving entities, or LSEs, of which CCAs are, we need to provide what's called resource adequacy or capacity. So essentially, we need to make sure that there's enough electricity on the grid at any particular time to serve our maximum potential load. And so what that means is we need to buy power sources that are available when the California Independent System Operator calls on them. So that can come in the form of like dispatchable power, like a gas-fired power plant, or maybe some hydroelectricity, but it also can come in the form of battery storage, or other types of storage also. So I would say that right now we are in the process of going through that power purchase agreement process. We have a solicitation that's out for those longer term contracts, and they do include potentially some battery storage. We're actually mandated by the Public Utilities Commission to do a small piece of our portfolio in battery storage right now, because the industry is just starting to kind of find its legs. And
yeah, I just saw plans for one of those facilities outside of Vacaville, and it's not small.
No,
it's 25 acres of huge buildings. It's covering 25 acres with buildings with nothing more than a driveway between the buildings, out in the country, right up against people's houses. And it's, I mean, huge buildings. Each building is like 130 to 150,000 square feet, and they're 20 some odd feet tall. And, you know, more than a little concern from, you know, people that border this piece of property. So it's not any small building or facility when they start talking about this major battery storage.
Yeah, and so that's one sort of variation on it. That's very, very large scale. That's what we call utility scale storage. And so I wasn't aware of that, but thank you for bringing that to our attention. We're not contracting for that. I don't think we have any involvement.
Bucktown Energy LLC.
No, we don't have any contracts with Bucktown.
No, that's the name of the company.
Right, no, I get it. But what I can tell you is that more typically the battery storage is coming along with like large scale renewables. So like a big utility scale solar power plant, it will occupy a portion. And so when you look at those facilities, the footprint of those is even much bigger than what you're describing. And the battery storage would typically be incorporated into that, because you produce it, you store it, and then you deliver it when it's needed. So you don't have any less inefficiencies with line loss and things of that nature. But what I would say is that there is a transition that's going on right now in the energy, landscape here in California in particular. Part of it is driven by some of the renewables, drive towards higher renewable and cleaner energy, where you have more variable kind of production. So it's, the windmills, down in Montezuma Hills, or next to the Budweiser plant. You have solar. We have a little bit of it here in Yolo County, but not that much. You have more of it sort of south in the valley where the energy resources actually, it's more efficient to actually do the further south you get. Generally speaking, the more efficient it is. And so, so you are starting to see those come online and be a greater portion of the overall energy mix. And so you need to be able to match that with, like I said, these more dispatchable type resources. So energy storage, we expect that that's going to come into. sort of
Yeah, I
sharper
just
focus.
have a concern because we had somebody with lithium batteries on their bicycle blow up and burn their house down in town. So then you take and put lithium batteries on 25 acres of massive buildings, that'd be a little bigger bang, I think.
Yeah, it's a big investment. I mean, the protocol that's, and I'm not saying that I know a whole bunch about it, but, the investment at that scale includes a lot of thought that goes into it. Perhaps not on the land use side, but more in terms of the actual resource itself. So this is the type of thing, I mean, it's very, very good questions, but it gives you an idea about the engagement level that we now have. And with a board of directors, if the city decides to go forward, you would add 2 members to our board of directors. And so there would be an opportunity to, one, learn more about this. We call it sort of raising the energy literacy.
Yeah, how to stay on where any of this happens.
Exactly. So there'd be that opportunity. And I don't want to, I know it's the only item tonight, but I don't want to take up too much time. But I'm happy to continue to answer questions. But if I'm going on too long, John, give me the gong.
Gong.
Okay, good.
Other questions on council? Is there anybody in the public that has any questions on this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, come forward, please.
Name's Peter Meyer, I live at 21 East Avenue, and I like talking to you guys. But I was curious about, with all the renewables that you guys are doing. I'm assuming it's solar and wind energy is your primary sources?
Some hydro as well.
And some hydro?
Yeah.
I know with there's probably a good area for solar, if not a lot of it, I know it's getting built in other areas. And, are you guys filtering this power before you guys are putting it right on the grid, or how's that working? Because I was in an area where we were very solar heavy, and it would put so much noise into the lines that it would hurt a lot of sensitive equipment to it. Like when people have drives and stuff, or they have electronics inside their house, and if half the sounds opts into the whole thing or doesn't opt out, am I going to be stuck with a lot of energy that it's not going to be useful, but I'm still getting charged for?
You want to answer that?
Sure. I know that might be a little technical, but.
Well, basically, the utilities, the distribution utilities have interconnection agreements, and so they do studies when a large solar farm goes onto their system to see what the impacts would be. So they would basically model, a large 100 megawatt system on their system to see if it could actually handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a point where they'll actually say, no, you can't install a system here because it's going to impact our distribution system, or you're going to have to pay for upgrades so that it won't cause problems.
What about like the people who are in the middle? Because I was at one spot and they put in this giant solar field, and they have a PG&E substation over here. Then there's a spot in the middle. Well, equipment at this place is 480 volts. Well, suddenly, the way solar works is you have to push energy or electricity in, so you're pumping up the voltage a little bit. Well, before you know it, at this one plant, the voltage was up around 525 volts.
Yeah, in that case, you would probably need to install capacitors or something to control that. If you could prove that it was actually on the utility side that was causing the problem, there might be some mitigation.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't talk to it specifically because I'm not
Right.
aware of it.
No, these are some of the problems that I've kind of seen, and then, And I do know with solar, you do have SCRs, they're very dirty, they put a lot of harmonics and frequency in that,
Yeah,
your meter picks it up and gives you a bill for it, but you can't really use it.
yeah, it's up to the utility, the distribution utility, to ensure that that doesn't happen and to provide you a certain level of clean energy. We're the generation provider, we pump it into PG&E's grid, they deliver it to you. And I would expect that any plant that we build on their system, that the analysis will be done to ensure that the customers are made whole. But I can't speak to every situation.
Okay. Yeah, I just curious. I was in, like I said, I was in a very solar heavy area and these were
Yeah, I can
a
see
lot of
that.
problems.
If,
that
if
we
you're
were
close to a
running into.
generation plant, your voltage will go up and it actually supports the system. But those closer to that have higher voltage and those further down the line have lower voltage.
Right.
So there's this balance that you have to take care of and you install equipment on the system to compensate for that one way or the other.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Kate,
Go ahead.
Okay, Abigail?
Abigail Vargas, 1012 Taft Court. I just want to be sure if I understand. I used to work for an electrical monitoring equipment company, so I have some knowledge of the grid. Are you purchasing through your contracts on the open market, or do you actually own the assets, or is there a mix that you're doing with your company? Okay. I mean,
Sure. So we're purchasing contracts. So at this point, there's no plans to own generation systems. So we'd be purchasing both short-term and long-term contracts and blending our portfolio.
okay. And then one other question, if you want to stick there. Are you making purchases that are local within California, or are they out of state?
Another really good question. So the purchases that we have been making up to this point have primarily been out of the Northwest. So it's wind and a little bit of hydroelectricity out of the Northwest. Our plan is to transition. I mentioned the solicitation that we have out. The solicitation that the board, sort of criteria that the board approved, looked at location. So we actually tried to prioritize Yolo County, and we said if not Yolo County, then the surrounding counties, again, to sort of localize the benefits. And then if not that, then within California. So right now, it's relatively difficult, and the prices that came back to us we didn't get anything in Yolo County. No responsiveness to what we needed at that particular time. So most of the proposals have come from San Joaquin Valley and a little bit further south than that. So we'll be entering into long-term power purchase agreements or PPAs between 15 and 20 years for those particular resources. But what we are going to be doing though is we're going to issue a second solicitation that focuses on, that only fills in a certain amount of our portfolio. We'll be issuing a second solicitation that focuses on Yolo County specifically. And we'll bring those, there'll be an open solicitation. When opportunities present themselves, we'll bring those forward to the board with analysis to see how those fit into our portfolio. Again, the idea is to try to the degree that we can, try to localize, the generation benefits, both in terms of jobs and line loss and other things. And with the idea that to fill in sort of those holes, we're leaving open positions within our portfolio for that particular reason. So, but again, we wouldn't be necessarily owning those assets, we would be contracting.
And what's your short-term contracts? What's the timeframe on those?
We have 1, 2, and 3 year contracts, and we're a little over a year into our operation, so we're looking to transition most of those out in the next year or so.
I have one last question. So if, Kate, please come forward. Sorry.
Kate Laddish, 400 Morgan Street, number 21. And I remain deeply enthusiastic about Winters joining Valley Clean Energy, and I'm delighted that staff recommends that action. I think doing this would dovetail with efforts to decrease our greenhouse gas production, especially relating into the climate action plan that Carol Sion's been working on and has been discussed. And I think that mentioning the climate action plan, that having a decision like this come before council highlights the importance of moving forward with something like the climate action plan and the climate committee, because that would set us up for being able to consider climate-related issues. I think that joining Valley Clean Energy would make it so that it would allow renters, people who live in apartments, people with limited financial means to decrease their greenhouse gas footprint in a way that's not available. If you don't own your home or if you don't have the money in order to install a solar array, you're kind of stuck. And so this is an issue that Bonnie Dixon brought up one of the times that this came to council before. I think it's an excellent point, and so I'd just like to amplify that since she couldn't be here today. And put this far enough away that I can read it for a second. And let's see, that one of the questions that I have is relates to the fee assistance programs that PG&E has, such as the medical baseline for people who have medically necessary heating or cooling needs, or for powering medical devices such as wheelchairs or scooters or oxygen and so forth, and the CARE program. And so I just was curious from Valley Clean Energy if there'd be a seamless transition with that. Do those programs remain in place? They are really important, and so I was just hoping to get a sense of how that works. But overall, I'm very enthusiastic about staff recommending that there's joint Valley Clean Energy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Valley Clean Energy honors the CARE, FARA, and MedRates. In fact, the MedRate customers do better because there is something called an exit fee, which I don't want to get into details right now, but they will actually save more money by being with Valley Clean Energy because they don't have to pay that exit fee.
Anyone else with questions out there in the public? So the last question I had is if the city were to recommend moving forward and bringing this back, so if we went forward with it, are we in for a certain period of time? Is there an end date, or is it just go on until we see if something came up, we decided we wanted out? What would be?
It's another very good question. So once the city decides to join, Valley Clean Energy will begin procuring energy on behalf of the community with an assumption of an opt-out rate that's similar to what we have right now. And at that point, Winters would be committed to continuing on with the program as long as the program is operational. There is an exit provision within the joint powers agreement, but it does involve essentially paying an exit fee, similar to what Jim just described, and that would make the customers who remain with Valley Clean Energy after the exit of one of our jurisdictions whole. And that's not dissimilar to the exit fee that PG&E currently charges participants in community choice aggregation. So that's the power charging difference adjustment. We wouldn't give it that name because that's a terrible name, but it would be very similar to that.
And the cost to the city is $25,000, and then that is repaid in a few years, correct?
Right. So it's a $25,000 membership fee, and that's a sliding scale depending on the size of the community. But $25,000 would be reimbursed to the city once Winters customers begin being served in January 2021.
In the most important part, and Bill brought this up, was about, especially for the seniors and stuff like that. Your rates right now are the same as PG&E rates. And is that pretty much guaranteed that they would remain equal to or less than PG&E's? There's not 2 years down the road, we're going to be paying way more, or is that set in stone somewhere that they stay equal to or less than?
So the main control on that is because we're in a competitive situation. Our customers can leave. The board of directors is very sort of sensitive to the price, the rate setting. And so while there's nothing that says we can't make a guarantee that we will always and forevermore be, equal to PG&E or less than PG&E, if our rates go higher than PG&E, then there's an incentive for customers to leave. And so it's a self-regulating system, essentially, is what it comes down to. So we can't make that guarantee, but it's kind of built in, it's baked in.
Okay, I think that's all the questions it looks like, so.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to kind of walk through the basic schedule that's in front of us. So there'll be actions that will be requested of the city council. There will be a resolution and an ordinance that comes back. Those are similar to what Woodland and Davis and Viola County passed. But also, part of the process is for the existing Joint Powers Agency members to give a nod of the head also. So we'll be going back to the Woodland City Council, the Davis City Council, and the Board of Supervisors if the City of Winters decides to move forward. And they will take that action similar to what we did for Woodland when they joined. That will sort of culminate, again, if the council decides to go forward, that'll culminate with Valley Clean Energy submitting a revised implementation plan to the Public Utilities Commission by the end of this calendar year. So there are a number of steps, I think, that were outlined in the staff report, but we'll be engaging in those in part based on direction.
Yeah, just in short, on page 59 of the staff report, there's a schedule. This would come back with a resolution requesting the DCE for membership. Be followed up by an ordinance that would come back on second meeting in October. In November, there'd be a second reading of the ordinance. It then kicks into DCE to do the things that they need to do. On page 63 of the staff report is the overall work program. One of the things is pretty aggressive community outreach effort on all this. Part of this coming back to the council in October will involve the data review and the information regarding everything. So the bottom line for tonight is just if the council wants, just give staff authorization to bring this back on October 1st to move the process forward.
Okay.
Consideration to move the process forward.
Sounds like the council is interested in moving forward with it, is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Something we vote on tonight, but we will direct you to move forward with it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and patience. We appreciate it very much. We'd be honored to have you join. Thank you. Great questions from the audience too. Thank you.
Last thing is our city manager's report.
Just a couple of really simple things to answer all the swimmers that they can get 15 people.
Swimmers.
They can continue their program through Tracy's October. Through October.
Is that monthly fee or?
Yeah,
they pay for the month of October.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
in, no, that's when I just pay for the month of October.
15 monthly fees for October.
Agreed.
Cheaper than the health club membership. The second thing is there's a very good chance that the Hotel Winters may have occupancy. Today we went through 14 items on the punch list that, if you had a typewriter, you could finish the typewriter and a paintbrush. They should be able to make getting their temporary certificate of occupancy. So over there today, they are just busting it, trying to get things going. But yeah, I'm not saying Thursday. It's been a wild ride of a project, but congratulations really are in order to the entire Hotel Winters team, Michael Levis and the group. It looks like we're almost there. And the best news is that the elevator goes all the way to the floor.
Test that out.
It's an A ride.
And that'll be my report, and I'll meet with these young ladies after the meeting and set up a time to talk about some stuff.
I just have one question for the city manager. If there isn't anything, that's pressing, for our next meeting, we're we able to, there is.
I haven't announced, I'll make that just right before I adjourn.
Okay.
So we're going to not have our meeting, the second meeting of this month on the 17th. Is that right? That date? So we're gonna, we have a couple council members that will be out, city manager will be out. We were going to not have a meeting that night. Our next meeting will be October 1st. On that note, I will adjourn the meeting. 7:50.
All right. Thanks for attending. This is Energy. Put on a whole show.